Hello, and welcome to another episode of Fire 5 at Phoenix. My name is Zoe Thompson. I am here from Phoenix Life and Wellbeing Coaching. This is another episode. I think we're in the 30s now. We're nearly into 12 months of this season, and today we're talking about change. I am joined by Katy Osborne, who's going to introduce herself in just a moment. If you've not watched any of these before, you could be joining us live, or you might actually be listening or watching back. But Katy is joining me live. We are recording this live. She has 5 questions on the subject of change. I haven't seen the questions, so anything that happens in the next 45 minutes to an hour is all very natural, all unplanned, but hopefully some meaningful conversation that gives you some hints, tips and advice that you can take away and hopefully use. So if you are watching this, whatever channel you are watching this, please like, subscribe. And if you are hearing things that you think might help people that you know, please do feel free to share and help get that information out there. So let me get Katy to introduce herself. Katy, thank you so much for joining me today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. So, yes, hi, I'm Katy. I am that knockout virtual assistant that makes up Cova Business Support. And I'm still recently into my venture of a new business, so into my 4th full month. But as a virtual assistant, I specialise in events and all things events, social media and marketing, and the general admin bits and pieces. So that's me. I take on the busy work so you can make your business work.
Awesome. Great strapline there. And we were just having a conversation before we came into live. Katy's had a huge period of change over the last sort of 12 months, like you said, 4 months into business. So this is a great topic, I think, for us to join up together and talk through. So you got five questions for me?
Yes, I have. A little generic, but I thought in some ways, but I thought it would also be able to sort of connect with some people. So my first question really is, what advice would you give to someone facing change?
Big question. And I think a lot of people have faced change in the last 12 months, haven't they? I mean, yourself included, some work changes, some sort of personal change. And I think the first thing is to look at what feels similar, because I think we can get really caught up in what is different. So I think the first thing quite often that I work through with people is, okay, what is still staying the same? So what in all of the change that is happening, what will still be the same? What will still be familiar? So, we talk about the comfort zone, don't we? I'd call it the familiar zone. It's not always comfortable, but it is familiar. And so sometimes when we go through change, it's that expansion of things that will change within it. But actually some things, sometimes quite a lot of things still stay the same. So if you think about it as that comfort zone, is looking at when things are changing, what stays the same, what's a little change, and what are the bigger changes, because sometimes it can just feel very consuming, can't it? Whereas actually, and I guess even with your changes, there's probably still some things that you do on a daily basis that haven't changed. So although the work that you are doing is under a different umbrella and has changed and evolved, there are probably lots of things within that haven't changed or have just adapted, kind of tweaked a little bit. So I think when people feel that overwhelm of change, and change feels big and change feels uncomfortable and change is uncertain, working out what isn't, so what is still familiar, what is certain, what is guaranteed, what can you control, I think can really help. And so when it feels big, look to see how you can sort of zone in that vision so that that helps with that focus and it feels smaller and then more manageable.
Definitely. I hadn't really thought about it like that, as in, I think when something does, some sort of change does happen in your life, you tend to concentrate on the change rather than what is familiar and what is staying the same, those sort of homely comforts that are the same sort of all the time, that won't change. I think if I'd actually thought of things like that a little more, I think I'd have put myself at a bit more ease rather than sort of the worry and anxiety that I probably went through.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
And that, which is all very natural. It's very natural to focus on the worrying bits, because that's how, that's how we focus on, that is our natural go-to, is to look at the negative first and then work out the positive. But I think sometimes looking at what the positives are to balance it out, or what's not changing to balance it out, can really help. But also focusing on where you're moving towards rather than what you're leaving behind. And I think that can be a real challenge sometimes. I mean, it depends on what the change is, but sometimes we can get really caught up in what we're losing, or what we're missing out on, or what's getting left behind, rather than the excitement and the challenges and the things that are coming up. So I think the focus and the attention is also really important.
Definitely. Thank you.
Okay.
So moving on to my second question, if you don't mind me asking, but what's the biggest change that you have found yourself taking, and how did you keep focused on getting through it?
Ooh, it would be really hard to pick one. I mean, I think I've been through lots of personal and professional change, and probably it's what I think has really led me into what I do now, because I've had that variety, if you like, of both personal and professional experiences that have, I think, really helped me to understand quite often that, or how do people describe, that, okay, she gets it. She gets that this is uncomfortable. She gets that this can be frustrating, and being able to move forward. I'm like, I've had lots of changes. I think probably the most significant, I don't know, they're all significant, aren't they? Because they all kind of take you on different paths, don't they? But I think every change, whether it's been significant or felt significant, I think that's the difference. Some of them have really felt significant, but long term have been insignificant, and some of them have felt less significant, but actually have been more significant longer term, as in their longer term impacts. I think it's short term and long term, isn't it, of how it feels at the time and how it has an impact. So, and I think there's certain things that have gone on in my journey that didn't feel like a big thing at the time. There was, so as an example, an opportunity came up when I was employed to go on a self-development course, to be a self-development trainer, so like a sideline role to the day job that I was doing. Now, at the time, that didn't feel particularly significant. It was an opportunity. I was excited by it. It was something I wanted to do, but it didn't feel like a big change. It didn't feel like a significant change. It didn't feel like this big decision that was going to put me on a different path. But that's what it did, that going in. And I remember like the Wednesday, it was a Monday to Friday course. And I remember the Wednesday going, I want to do this all the time. This is what I want to do, and going into that first self-development training program and being the trainer at the front. Yeah, it was like, okay, the day job, yeah, that's cool. I enjoy doing it. But this feels very, very different. Yeah. So I think at the time, the advert goes out, we're looking for people who want to do this. And I was like, yeah, that looks cool, I'll do that. But it didn't feel like a significant decision at the time. But when I look back and I think, at what point were those sliding doors moments of, okay, the doors opened, I took that step, and now I'm here, that was probably one of them. So, that there's other times where I think I look at, redundancy, personal circumstances like, divorce, having children, that kind of thing. They are significant milestones in my life, but I'm not sure they've necessarily put me on a different path. Whereas, it's such an interesting question. I'm not really.
There's lots of little things that actually sort of have been the sort of stepping stones of your path to create where you've got to now. And actually, if you look back, all those different parts of your life like you say, which haven't been major, or what you'd felt like were major sort of milestones.
Yeah.
I mean, I know personally that I can sort of pick elements from previous jobs, and I suppose coming out of redundancy, and kind of having that sort of panic moment of where I'm at, where I'm going, what can I actually do? It made me kind of realize, actually, yes, I can do that. Yes, I do have a skill there, and yes, I picked that skill up from back then, and I didn't realize actually how much I'd sort of picked up along the way, rather than just kind of focusing on sort of one thing and go, I can't do that anymore because events has gone under. Well, for now, what am I going to do? But yeah, you're totally right there, as in I feel like I've picked up those skills. Now I'm sort of putting them all to use. And there's a lot more to me than even I thought.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, you know, all of our experiences go into the melting pot and really shape who we start to become, who we are becoming, you know, and what we can do and how we do it and why we do it. That there's so many things that happen along the way that are part of that. And I think there's what we might looking back is easy, isn't it? Because we've got the benefit of hindsight, we've got the benefit of the bigger picture. We can see how things have slotted into place, have slot into place over the years. And it makes it much easier to see, doesn't it? Much easier to look back and look at that big picture. At the time, things can feel really big, but then you think, in a year's time, when I look back at this, is it going to be a big part of the picture or a little part of the picture, you know? And I think that sometimes helps with perspective. It helps to rationalize things of, you know, okay, is this going to be a big thing in my, you know, my life history and my life story? Is this going to be a big thing, or is this going to be, you know, is it one page of the chapter, or is it a whole chapter, you know? And I think sometimes it can feel heavy and significant and huge, but then it becomes something that is irrelevant and small. So it's very much about how we feel in the moment, isn't it? And I think sometimes taking that step back and being able to rationalize and being able to look at the bigger picture can really help. But you're right, everything that you were saying there about all of the skills and experience and things that we learn help to evolve our character and our personality and who we are and why we do what we do. Yeah, it's probably been the same. You know, I think redundancy and that real career change or an opportunity to take a different direction gives us that opportunity to sit and reflect of, okay, what do I want to do? How do I want to do it? And why do I want to do it? What's important? And then that gets exciting then, doesn't it? Rather than taking opportunities that come up, you get to create the opportunities.
Yes. And I think if I'd sort of had the idea of looking at, just like you were saying earlier, about looking at sort of the, I suppose, the controllables, the things that are in your control, I'd have felt a bit more comfortable a lot earlier on, because I suppose I was made redundant at the end of August last year.
Yeah.
And I didn't start, well, I started accidentally picking up some work towards the end of November, realizing actually, you know what, I can do this. And with the encouragement and support of my network, it's been amazing. And getting the guidance to be able to pursue this path has been amazing. And I wouldn't have had that if I didn't have the push from everyone.
Yeah. And I think that's what everything that is needed is there, isn't it? It's having the people around you that help you to see what's there and how you want to use it and develop it. And it's always great, isn't it, to have that support network that help you to see things in a different way and in a different perspective, to see how you can take control of what might not feel in a controllable, but something that you can take control of and shape for you, essentially.
Definitely. Well, that kind of leads me on to my third question, really. So if you were faced with another big challenge in your life now, do you think you'd approach it any differently than you've done previously?
I think for me, with every challenge that comes up, it's I reflect back and think, okay, have I dealt with something like this before? Have I managed through something like this before, or something that required similar skills?
So do you sort of take a step back from the challenge and kind of look at it?
Yeah, well, I
from an
I do and I don't. If I'm being honest, I am a jump straight into it and just get going before I reflect. So I'm definitely more the action taker rather than the reflector, but I'm learning to take that step back and reflect a lot more, learning to kind of go at that slower pace. But I know that my natural response is to step into it and feel like I'm doing something about it rather than stand on the sidelines and watch and wait.
Yeah.
That to me is more overwhelming than just jumping straight in. But I know for other people it's the opposite. What I'm learning to do, and with age and experience, is to step in, because it's okay to do that, but make sure that I give myself the time to reflect and review as I go, so that I feel like I'm moving forward, I feel like I'm taking action. But the reflection and the review is important to make sure that I am questioning whether or not I'm taking the right steps and the right action, and not just kind of running off 10 miles an hour in one direction and kind of ignoring everything that's going on, which I have done. I know I have done in the past. Yeah. So I do need to take steps. I do need to feel like I'm doing something, but I do need to make sure that I pause periodically and just go, okay, what am I doing here? Is this in the direction I want to be going in? Is this the way that I want to do it? Is this still important? All of those things. But I'm very much jump in 2 feet. let's just get going. And I always have been. I've done the old team building exercises when I was in employment. And you get given the challenge, don't you? And as a group, you get given a challenge and you've got half an hour to complete the challenge. And I remember being in groups where people would want to plan for 20 minutes and then do the 10, 10. I'm like, oh my God, we've just got 10 minutes. Like, we just need to get started. And I'm like, I can't keep discussing this. And we need to just, give me something to go away and start doing while you finish planning. And so I know that I do just want to kind of I want to roll my sleeves up and I want to just get on with it.
I'm very much the same sort of person when it comes to that. Sort of just plow on through, and I mean, yes, I do reflect, I suppose. I mean, especially recently, the past year, I've been reflecting on where I've got to. I mean, I spent the majority of my life sort of pursuing a career in hospitality. So just under 10 years, and with that all kind of been sort of ripped from under my feet. Yeah, it's kind of been, okay, well, what on earth do I do now? So like I said, I've taking this sort of time to actually realize what my skills are really helped, kind of realizing how much I'd achieved. I mean, someone said to me once, think of a challenge that you've overcome, and actually, how did you get through it, and what traits did you show, your core strengths and your values, and actually to sort of celebrate how I've got through that. So yes, I suppose looking back to reflect has definitely helped in the progression of where I'm at today, especially sort of within the past 6 months, especially. It's definitely something I need to work on.
Well, I love that you mentioned there that somebody had asked you what the characteristics, the skills, the resources that you needed to get through a previous challenge. And so I refer to those as internal resources. So when have you dealt with something like this before? What skills did you use? What experience did you gain? What did you find out about yourself when you went through that? Like your character, behaviors, things that you can do really well that you can use in this situation. I think once you've done that, you then know where your gaps are, to know where you might need some external resources of, okay, I can do all of this to make it happen, but actually I could really do with some extra learning or support or accountability or coaching or whatever that looks like in these gaps. And then you can go and use the network that you've got to say, actually, I could really do with some support with this. But knowing that actually a large chunk of it, you already have the skills and the tools and the characteristics that are needed to be able to move through it. And just knowing then that you can use that support network to help support you to move forward. And I think that also comes in with the reflection and the review of, you don't have to do it all on your own.
Yes, definitely.
But you could. It's
the thing. I didn't realize how resilient I actually am until I started looking back and thinking, okay, well, I did manage to get through that, and that kind of showed the resilience and how I wouldn't let that be, I don't know, sort of make me crumble or anything. I'd push through and I wouldn't let it beat me down or anything.
And I think that's the thing with change, isn't it? Is change is a challenge, but change is also a real eye-opener of who we are and what we can do. Definitely. That we might not know if we hadn't have faced that challenge, if we hadn't have gone through that period of change. We might not have learned certain things about ourselves or learned certain things about what we are capable of, and that resilience. So such a great example. And I love the fact that having this conversation with you today. Also, I spoke to Jade last year. We were on a different topic, but Jade was also in the hospitality sector, had been made redundant, and was now running her own business with somebody else who she'd worked with previously, that they'd always worked really well together, and they had created their company, mobile valeting. So a completely different industry, but what she had done was taken all of her skills and tools from the work that she'd done before, but also she had background in care, and so that sort of the care element and the customer service element is probably what makes her business or their business different from other companies. And that's a big part of it, of who am I as a person, what am I going to bring into what I'm shaping and what I'm growing. And I know that you've done exactly the same, looking at your business of, what is it about me, what do I do differently, what do I bring into the VA world that other people don't, and what makes it, what that then is what makes it special.
It's just trying to sort of differentiate yourself as well from the market, because I suppose that when you think of a virtual assistant, I know a lot of people think of the admin side of things or bookkeeping. The bookkeeping is definitely not my forte, but I know I can manage things virtually. I mean, we've gone online for a lot of things through networking and making those connections. Everything has gone virtual, from wine tasting, so it's like I said, it's just trying to sort of adapt and make myself known for something different, but also something that I know I'm good at. So like I said, events haven't disappeared forever. I know everyone's dying to get back together and celebrate birthdays and a big wedding and all that sort of thing. So while it's just on the back burner, I've just been focusing on what I can control and what I know people do need. So that's the social media side of things and a bit of the admin, because I have got that creative eye. So knowing what I can sort of bring to the table to help everyone else in things that they find tedious. I mean, I had my husband say to me the other day, I was doing some document formatting and jazzing up a Word document basically. And he said to me, that just looks like my worst nightmare. And I said, I've got really engrossed into it. This is what I love. And I said, well, what you do is my worst nightmare. He works in IT, so that's completely over my head. So yes, everyone has their fortes, their strengths to bring to the table. So yes, it's definitely been an eye-opener to sort of regroup and find out what my strengths are to be able to sort of move forward.
Yeah, and your passion as well. Like, I
Definitely.
noticed that being able to choose what you do, being able to choose what you do and how you do it is one of these opportunities that do come up when change happens, of
Yeah.
that reflection of, okay, what is important that I might want to fight a little harder to bring with
Yeah.
me, and what isn't important that I've been carrying around and doing, that actually I'm going to leave this here, and I'm going to
Yeah.
bring all of the good stuff with me, and all of the things I want more of, I'm going to bring with me, and the things, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to decide what actually I might want to leave behind with some of the other old stuff. So
Yes,
it's a
that's
great
true.
opportunity to do that.
So that
You can leave IT behind and bring the things that you get into flow with, and
Yeah.
leave all of the rest.
So that kind of leads me on to my fourth question, I think. That, I mean, I think we need change in our lives to be able to grow. But I was curious to know, why do you think that we need change in our life?
That's a good question. I mean, it's one of, if you look at sort of psychological human needs, variety and personal growth features very heavily in feeling like we're evolving and moving forward. I think a lot of people, talk about the comfort zone. It can be very easy to try and hold on to staying the same, because we also like to know that we have that certainty. That's a human need, but in balance, we also want variety, and we also want to feel like we have that personal growth. So sometimes they can really conflict with each other, because we want certainty, we like routine, we like things that are familiar, we like things that are easy, that we don't need to give too much thought about, which is why we like things that are the same, or to know that certain things are going to happen. But on the complete opposite end of that, we like variety, and we crave growth. We crave moving ourselves forward. So I love, within mindfulness, the acknowledgement that change is a constant. Change is always happening. I mean, we change multiple times a day. Most of the time we don't pay it any attention, because it's a simple change that doesn't need too much energy, doesn't need too much focus. But change is the one thing that's certain. It's not that there is a certainty that a change will happen. We might not know what that change is going to be, but there is that certainty that change is always going to happen. So
I think in some ways we do like change. I mean, just thinking about the lockdown in general, we have those holiday breaks. We like that change of scenery. So being confined within sort of four walls, I know has been really tricky. So one craving that change, with there's only a certain amount of time that we can sort of spend in one place, I guess.
And that's the variety. That's the, we like to know that things are certain, but we also like the variety within that. So even if you talk to people who like structure, they have a structure that might be quite firm, like quite rigid in like how they live their week, but they like variety within that. They like space for variety within that. So people like the structure, so that they know what things are guaranteed, or they know that certain things are guaranteed, but they like the variety within that. And that variety is change, isn't it? In a slightly different format. So we do crave it. And I think from that personal growth, is wanting to challenge yourself to improve, wanting to challenge yourself to grow and evolve, and change helps us to do that, because it's quite often it feels like an external challenge, doesn't it? Of change feels external, which helps create internal change. And I think sometimes that's where people find it more of a challenge, because it's external, or it's externally led change, which leads to an internal change. But sometimes we go through an internal change that leads to an external change. So I think, certainly from my perspective, the thought of being stagnant, or the thought of not moving forward, that to me is a bigger fear than change itself.
I agree.
Like,
I think
if
not being
I,
able to push yourself or grow, or
yeah,
I think I just feel stuck somehow.
yeah, that's a bigger fear for me than the fear of not changing is bigger
Yeah,
than the fear of change. But then that's not how it is for everybody. For other people, it's the other way around. And so it's looking at what is the fear? What is it I'm worrying about of change? What is it about change that worries me? What is it about change that unsettles me? And if you can kind of start to answer some of those questions, then that's something that you can then work with. But yeah, for me, I love those opportunities to test and try things out and see things that are different.
yeah, definitely. It's I mean, I was having this conversation the other day with a friend, how he is very comfortable and he's secure in his job, whereas he was saying like how much he sort of admired how much I sort of pushed through and changed and adapted, which was lovely to hear. And I said, well, is there something that I can help you? Because I've had the help and support of, I suppose, my network and connections, help pushing me and giving me advice. And he's not sort of in that online world as such. And I said, is there anything that I can support you with or help sort of make you great? And he's like, no, I'm comfortable where I am. But that's just who he is.
Yeah.
And it's not my place to sort of say you've got to grow, but everyone has their own pace as well.
Yeah. And it might be that there's change within his world, but it's within the boundaries of where he feels comfortable.
Yes.
And so there probably is change in that. There probably are challenges within that. They're just within that boundary. Whereas there are, and it is a really small percentage. I mean, I've seen 2, 3, 4% of people like to push themselves out of that comfort zone, who really like the stretch goals. Because I think it's easy, isn't it, to, the next step.
Yeah.
The next step goals, which are within reach, they're a little bit of a push, but they're just outside of that boundary of what's comfortable. And there are others who are like, whoa, what's that over there? Let's see how far we can really push and stretch. But that's a really small percentage of people who choose to do that, who put themselves in situations where they can do that. The majority of people work within that comfort zone. So he's actually in the majority. I was going to use the word normal then, but that majority is a better choice of words, because most people work within that boundary, and that works for a lot of people, and some people are happy with that. And if he's in a good space and a good place with that, then that's good. I think it's when you're in that place and it is familiar but it's not comfortable, and it's not fulfilling, that's when you need to start looking at, okay, what's just outside that boundary that I could look to. You don't need to take huge stretch goals outside. Just those first steps, marginal gains can make a real difference.
And I think if I hadn't had if my role hadn't been made redundant, I wouldn't have taken that self-employment leap. But it's obviously given me the nudge, and there's been the mortgage, the bills, and everything that's been having to be paid. So I've had to do something. And I suppose having the confidence to reach out for help was the biggest step for me. To sort of say, help, what do I need to do from here? And everyone was so welcoming and helpful, and as soon as you sort of say the word help, people do want to help. So yes, I think looking back at it, I was definitely much more of I'm quite comfortable where I am, and I'm happy to sort of maybe push it a little bit and just not too far, but baby steps.
Yeah.
But obviously this sort of past year it's made me push myself because I've had to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, every
sometimes it's a nudge,
Yeah.
sometimes it's a push,
yeah,
and sometimes it's our own leap.
yeah, definitely.
Some come from the externals, some come from internal, that internal leap of faith, but sometimes it's a nudge, just something happens and it's a little nudge, and sometimes it's a bloody great shove, isn't it? It's redundancy is a shove. Let's be honest, redundancy is an external shove of okay, this is not your zone anymore. This is, so what are you gonna do? But I think that gives you the confidence that you then start to take control and you start to choose and make your own leaps.
Yes.
Because you have the confidence to think, okay, if I can do that in a situation that was not in my control, that was not my choice, I can make smaller leaps by choice.
Definitely.
Let me know stopping, just wait.
So that's leaves me with my final question, really. Do you think there's a particular trick or any guidance to sort of help support friends and family going through change? So not that it's not sort of going through change yourself, but seeing someone else go through change. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a really good question, because we're seeing lots of people go through change at the moment, aren't we? And like the example that you gave with your friend, how he would approach it to how you would approach it is very different. So I think this is probably quite generic advice, to be honest, is just keep your approach to how you can support, not how you might want support, but find out what support they need, what support they want. So like the example that you gave with your friend, how he wants support or the decisions he wants to make are very different to how you would approach it. So if you kind of stepped in, a bit more forceful approach of, okay, well, I think you should be doing this, and right, okay, let's map it all out, and what are you going to do next, and what are your options, he would go into complete overwhelm and would probably not answer your calls because it's not the support that he's looking for. Whereas what you have done by going in and saying, okay, what do you want to do? What support are you looking for? How can I help you? That leaves it really open. So he gets to tell you what support he wants and needs and how you can do that. So I think it's a generic question, really, for anything, any time our friends or family are going through something. It's that very open question of, okay, how can I support you? What do you need? What do you need from me? Because it's always a very individual answer, and actually it will be a different answer for different situations and from different people. So just that really open question of, how can I support you? What do you need from me? And also just hold that, your own experiences, your own way that you would approach it, unless it's asked for. And I think it's that, and I catch myself doing it as well. I think as humans, we like to problem solve, and so it's very easy to jump in with, well, what about this and what about that, and to offer solutions. Sometimes people don't want to problem solve, they just want to talk and be heard. And sometimes people do want to problem solve. It's just checking in with, okay, what do you need from me here? Do you want me to help you to problem solve, or do you want me to listen? Do you need something else? And that's a reminder to myself in that, as much of, okay, what do you need from me? How can I support you? And just hold on to our own judgments, our own perspectives of how we might manage that, because that might not be how they choose to manage it, and that's
very
for them
much
to work that through.
Jumping in with solutions or trying to problem solve for them, but very much holding back and asking, what can you do? What do they need from me? I think I think that's probably the best way. That's really helpful.
And you can always offer and say, look, I've got some ideas, or I've got some things that I think might help. Are you okay for me to share with them? Rather than that, when I did my first coaching course, we talked about unrequested coaching, you know, where you kind of jump in and you're like, oh, let me help you fix this, and kind of, you know, that and we all want to do it. That is what we want to do. It's not nice when we see people who are important to us in an uncomfortable situation. We want to be able to help to move them out of it. But, you know, certainly coaching is very much about standing there with them and being their support while they move themselves forward, rather than us, you know, we don't want to be the shove.
Yeah.
We don't want to be the shove. We want to be the person who supports and encourages them to take their own leap when they are ready.
Yeah.
Which links probably back into the question before. But, you know, I there will be people who I know personally who watch this and go, oh God, Zoe, you're terrible. You always do that. And I know, because I have to manage that, and I have to constantly remind myself of, they didn't ask you for that. That was not what they asked for. That they didn't ask you to, you know, contribute by jumping in and giving them the options of what you would do in that situation. It is hard, because you just want them to be in a better place, don't you? But
definitely, and I think that's where I struggle personally, is to be able to, I just want to help them.
Yeah.
So being able to try and sort of give some sort of solutions, some ideas of ways they could go about it. Yes, like you say, it's not probably the most helpful to everyone. But asking what they need is definitely something that I'll need to work on.
And with coaching, the sort of general ethos of coaching is that the people that we work with have the tools and resources. They have what they need to be able to move themselves forward. Coaching is helping them to find their way, to walk around the problem, look at different perspectives, and make their own decisions of how they wish to move themselves forward, and then being that support and guide for them to do that. So if I put myself in that coaching headspace, it's a much safer space for me to be able to do that. But I also know that, you know, friends and family, sometimes that is what they want. So it's just that check-in of, okay, what do you need from me? How can I support you? Because they might say, I'm out of ideas. I'm out of ideas, Katy. Give me some ideas. What would you do? You know, when they ask you that question, then they're asking you for your opinion. They're asking you for your experiences and your suggestions. But it's waiting for that question, or asking for that invitation to be able to offer that. And I think we all could probably do better with that. I don't know that I've met anybody that's kind of nailed that down, because it's not, as humans, it's when it's people we care about, it's not what we naturally want to do, is it?
No, definitely not, especially when they've come to you, or you've gone to them because you've heard about a situation or the change that's happening to them. Yeah, it's definitely something that you want to fix.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when people do come to you, that is the invitation. They have come to you because they want to hear, or they want to learn from your experience, or they want your support specifically. So sometimes that is the invitation. I think sometimes it's just that little check-in of, okay, is this really, before I offload my plan of action and have that sort of sleeves rolled up ready to go, of just checking in that's what they need. But I think it's a very, you know, I think a good generic question with anything that's going on, whether it's a personal change, a professional change, a change in health or well-being. It's, okay, what support do you need? How can I help you? Or how can I support you? What do you need from me? That's a great last question. Because I think that's kind of goes across lots of different areas and lots of different topics, and something that probably everybody who's listening or watching this gives like that, okay, that little reminder of, just keep that in check.
Yeah.
That is good.
Thank
you so much. What great. I love the fact that just the variety of the questions that come through. So thank you so much. And I know you said at the beginning they're quite generic, but I think within those questions there's lots of that we have talked through, you sharing your experiences and giving me the opportunity to talk through some of these areas is hopefully really helpful to people. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been great to sort of bounce ideas and just have that general chat.
Yeah, I love doing these. We will put these out. So this will go out across all of the social media channels. If you're not following already, please do. We'll put in all of the details so you can find Katy as well, and you can go and give Katy a follow. And like I said at the beginning, if you have heard something today that you know somebody who is working through something and you think this conversation could be of use to them, could be helpful to them, please do feel free to share with them. But Katy, thank you so much again for your time. Thank you for watching and listening, and we will be back again soon with a new guest, same topic, 5 more questions, and a brand new episode. So thank you very much.